2025 is shaping to be quite a year for dinosaur movies and dinosaur-themed media, especially in the wake of Jurassic World Rebirth, the 7th film of the Jurassic franchise, releasing on July 2nd. With the film having 2 trailers now, several promotional material, and the impact it will likely have on the franchise going forward. There are, of course, other dinosaur-themed movies and shows that aren't Jurassic, but still feature dinosaurs in them. Whether it is the upcoming Walking with Dinosaurs reboot, a Dinosaur Family film starring Ewan McGregor and Anne Hathaway, as well as more Jurassic World content such as the 3rd season of Chaos Theory, which has been released now as of this video's recording. But did you know that there is another dinosaur-themed film releasing in the same summer as Rebirth, a dinosaur film from an Australian indie production that's had a recent trailer drop early in April? Whether you've read the original books, read the comic books, been following the news and updates, or you are simply familiar with the concept, I am of course talking about Primitive War, the upcoming dinosaur-themed action war horror film written and directed by Luke Sparke, produced by his production company Sparke Films and distributed by Rialto Distribution. Based on the Luke Pettus novel of the same name, covering 2 soon-to-be 3 books, as well as a series of graphic novel adaptations, Primitive War is a fantasy action war horror story set during the height of the Vietnam War in 1968. It tells the story of a reconnaissance group of soldiers known as the Vulture Squad, sent by the US military to investigate a missing Green Beret squad of soldiers who disappeared in a jungle-covered valley in Vietnam. The group of soldiers come across scattered remains, footprints, and strange encounters that gradually reveal they've come into war with dinosaurs and prehistoric creatures that have mysteriously appeared in the valley, pitting modern humans and prehistoric terrors into a war for survival. This is the synopsis for the film, and based on the trailer, it will most definitely be the type of dinosaur film that will put the horror, suspense, violence, and brutality that we don't often see in dinosaur-themed media. Before we get further into talking about the trailer, let's first discuss the essential details about the film's source material, cast and crew, and the influences behind the film's premise. Primitive War was originally a novel written by author Ethan Pettus, published in 2017, followed up by a sequel in 2020 titled Primitive War 2: Animus Inferno, a 3rd book being published soon, and other books detailing the lore such as Primitive War Bestiary, and books such as The Hunting of Stalker Force, Primitive War Dispatches. There is even a graphic novel adaptation with concept art created by Ralph LaMadden. As you can see from the images, it is a collage of incredibly well done art panels, showing feathered dinosaurs such as the T-Rex, Utahraptors, and non-dinosaur creatures like the Quetzalcoatlus and Caprasuchus brutally killing humans. I did forget to mention that yes, the novels and comic books are quite graphically violent and scary at times, meaning the film will likely be pretty violent and scary, which if I were you, I'd recommend you read the novel or comics at your own risk. Even though I've never read the books or graphic novels, I can already tell that aesthetically it really immerses you into the world, with the lush jungles, Vietnam War setting, and the sight of soldiers fighting dinosaurs while contemplating about the nature of war, survival, and asking who is the real monster, man or nature. This sets it apart from most other dinosaur media which don't typically have dinosaurs fighting against soldiers during a historical conflict. Now, we've seen dinosaurs in settings like sci-fi premises involving time travel, apocalyptic futures, or even in alien planets, as well as the theme of control with humans trying to bend the dinosaurs to our will, for either themed attractions, corporate sponsorship, ethical dilemmas, or genetic manipulation. What makes Primitive War different is how it commits to a time period typically reserved for war films, while also tapping into an area where dinosaur media is beginning to embrace, the horror genre. And if you know me, I love horror movies. It's one of my favorite genres in film and storytelling. Now, I may have mentioned in the last video that Jurassic Park analog horror has exploded in popularity online, reflecting the broader trend of dinosaur horror being a subgenre that we don't often see in mainstream cinema. This film is exploring that without the found footage, of course, while also blending it with action, psychological drama, and of course the war genre. This brings me to talk about the film's vibes and influences, based on what we see in the trailer, as well as the creative team behind the project. Primitive War carries strong influences from creature features such as Jurassic Park, Kong Skull Island, and Predator, Vietnam War films such as Apocalypse Now, Platoon, Full Metal Jacket, and even video games like Turok, which had dino creatures in a futuristic war setting. From the helicopters soaring across the sky, soldiers trekking through the jungles, the rainy nighttime scenes, to the dinosaurs attacking the military on land, sea, and air, it shows us that the Vietnam War has transformed from a conflict between human ideologies involving North and South Vietnam, with US involvement, into a war for survival, dominance, and an evolutionary arms race to determine if humankind can give in to its primordial instincts and remain vigilant in the face of nature's wrath. It promises an action-packed, thrilling, brutal, tense, and emotionally evocative hunting experience that will either make you love the blend of dinosaur horror, action, war, and melodrama, or make you uneasy about how dark and unrelenting a film of this caliber can get. Based on the creative team, direction, and tone this film is going for, it might work. This gets me to discuss the cast and crew behind Primitive War, in which we see a fairly large cast of actors who have starred in many well-known movies and TV shows, even though you may not have seen or heard of these actors before, because they aren't quite A-listers in the same way that Hollywood actors would star in the big-budget productions like the Jurassic World franchise. The cast includes American actor Jeremy Piven, starring in films and series such as Entourage, Seinfeld, Helen, Kiss the Girls, Serpent Deputy, Rush Hour 2, etc. He likely plays the protagonist in the film, the tough guy soldier archetype who definitely notices something is off about the place they're venturing into as the Vulture Squad enters the dino-infested valley. Up next, we have Canadian actress Teresa Helfer, who has starred in well-known series such as Battlestar Galactica, Lucifer, Supernatural, and Van Helsing, the series. She's been in films, had a career as a fashion model, now retired, and plays one of the unnamed survivors of the Vulture Squad, as her character attempts to fight off both dinosaurs and any potentially defecting human character in the film. As of right now, her character doesn't have a name, so we'll have to wait to find out more info about the character names, profiles, and such as time goes on. This leads us to the next few principal actors, such as Australian actor Ryan Quantian, who starred in series such as True Blood, Summerland, Spellbender, Land of the Dragon Lord, and some notable films such as Dead Silence, Flight 7500, and 2067. We can see his character in some shots of the trailer. He seems to be the cool, tough, and gruff soldier who could or could not make it through the carnage, but as I've mentioned before, we still don't have full character details yet. Other notable actors include Nick Weschler, who was in The Boys, It's Always Sunny on Philadelphia, and Dynasty. Actress Anna Tunwin, who was previously in Mortal Kombat 2, Carl Sanson Jr., who was in Ladies in Black, Bump, In Between, and many movies and shows, Aaron Glennon, who previously starred in films and shows such as Snowpiercer, Santorum, and Interceptor, and the last semi-notable actor would be Jake Ryan, who previously starred in The Great Gatsby, Wolf Creek, Underbelly, and Savage. So as you can tell, there's way more actors than what I've mentioned, and I couldn't get to cover in greater detail every actor's filmography, acting career, or starring roles in TV and film. That's because these actors are primarily either TV actors or up-and-coming actors who are beginning to start their careers in the Australian film industry. While we don't have an official character list as of right now, you can still check out the list of actors who will star in it by visiting the IMDb page on Primitive War, which I'll leave the link to the description below for you to read on your own terms once you finish watching the video. Primitive War will likely either springboard many of these actors into greater stardom, or revitalize seasoned actors who've starred in many significant films and TV series, but aren't as big as the A-list or celebrity actors that you normally see starring in Hollywood productions or even in indie productions like A24, Blumhouse, Focus Pictures, etc. Mind you, this isn't a bad thing, as it allows indie actors from smaller film and TV projects to star in bigger projects that could launch their careers to greater heights, or take on roles that shows indie films can be very successful and well-made, even on a tighter budget, and smaller cast and crew. This brings me to briefly discuss the director Luke Sparke and his passion for making this film. Luke Sparke owns his own film production company, Sparke Films. He's previously written and directed films produced on an indie budget that covers genres such as crime thrillers like Bring Him to Me, sci-fi horror such as Scurry, mystery thrillers such as Red Billabong and The Devil Beneath. He is most notable for directing and writing the two sci-fi action films Occupation and Occupation 2 Rainfall, which is a duology of niche sci-fi projects that are about an alien invasion taking over Australia with a group of survivors banding together to fight the invasion. Think of it as The Walking Dead meets Edge of Tomorrow and Mad Max. Based on his filmography, this tells us that Luke is definitely passionate about making action, sci-fi, and horror movies even on a low budget, but not very strong critical reception. Despite this, interviews on Primitive War have stated his involvement with directing the project and why he was drawn to the book before adapting it to a live-action film. He said this in an interview when describing the film. "This ain't no walk in the park. I was captivated by the imagery surrounding Ethan's book and the story it told. I've worked hard on capturing that essence, but also the grittiness, horror aspects, and military edge. My vision is to feel like the characters have walked out of the film Platoon and into the jaws of the greatest predators the planet has ever known." He would later go on to state that he was particularly drawn to the concept of pitting dinosaurs against US soldiers in Vietnam, turning untapped territory in the dinosaur media genre by saying, "What's not to love about that concept? When I first heard about the book, I loved the ideas and concepts Ethan put into them, and we're shaping our film version into an exciting survival horror film." The author of Primitive War, Ethan Pettus, would comment on his work being adapted, and I would quote, "I am thrilled to see Luke's interpretation of my work. I know his team is giving this project everything it's got." So based on those interviews, it does give me and the Dino fandom enough faith in this film that it will be something great to watch. Luke would even comment on how he was definitely inspired by Hollywood to become a filmmaker, as he mentioned Jurassic Park, Predator, and Platoon, which did influence this film's Vietnam War's grimy jungle war aesthetics, creature feature sensibilities, time period, and thematic undertones. Now, his track record of mediocre or not so memorable movies shouldn't be alarming, because he's an Australian filmmaker, with Australia's film industry rising to become one of the big filmmaking hotspots that rivals Hollywood, just as South Korea, Europe, India, Mexico, Japan, and Canada are all contributing to the globalized, interconnected film industry. So it makes sense that Australia doesn't have the biggest budget or cultural influence as Hollywood does. Let's also not forget that every filmmaker, even the most successful ones, struggle before achieving mainstream success. Take Steven Spielberg, for example, who would later direct iconic films such as Jurassic Park, E.T., Raiders of the Lost Ark, as well as The Lost World. He wasn't very well known in the public eye before he did Jaws, as he was primarily known for directing TV movies, episodes of The Twilight Zone, and yes, he has made forgotten, mediocre, or obscure films that shows just how far Spielberg's cinematic journey has come. So I personally don't see it as a worry that Primitive War's cast and crew is in Hollywood, and in fact, the film looks incredible for being produced on a low budget, with the Gold Coast setting in Australia adding to the authenticity, a raw and realness to it that helps it feel more immersive and lived in than even some of the most well-polished blockbuster or big-budget movies coming out of Hollywood nowadays. What would this mean for the dinosaur movie genre if Primitive War is successful? That is something that I would like to explore in another video. This brings us to the last two topics of the video, covering the dinosaurs and creatures we will see in the film, as well as what to expect from the film's philosophical themes and aesthetic vision that will present a different type of dinosaur film we don't see very often in media. First, we see the large flying Astarchopterosaur Quetzalcoatlus flying over the long grass, with only its silhouette visible as we have a bird's eye view shot of the soldiers down below. Right off the bat, this showcases how massive and scary the pterosaur is, as we know from the fossil record dating 68 to 66 million years ago during the Maastrichtian stage of the Cretaceous period, that the Quetzalcoatlus were among the largest flying animals of all time. This scene will be a tense pick-and-choose survival scenario, as soldiers either attempt to hide, run, or try to shoot the flying creature, while the Quetzalcoatlus will likely use its large beak to snap up and brutally eat the soldiers alive, seeing how these pterosaurs are the same height as a giraffe and had a wingspan measuring up to 40 feet. Of course, we've seen the Quetzalcoatlus in popular media, such as in both Jurassic World Dominion and in the upcoming Rebirth, the paleo-documentaries Prehistoric Planet, Walking with Dinosaurs, though it is actually a remodeled Ornithocheirus, When Dinosaurs Roamed America, to video games like Ark Survival Evolved, Saurian, the Jurassic World Evolution games, and now in Primitive War. Which just goes to show how popular this flying reptile has become recently in popular media, even as it shifts from being scientifically accurate or more stylized in design. Primitive War's dinosaurs seem to blend both scientific paleo-accuracy with stylized monstrous designs, ensuring that its creature designs are different from past depictions, and I can't wait to see more of it in action once the film comes out. Next, we get a brief shot that shows a ground-level shot of a soldier as he is walking across a rocky surface in the dead of night. Behind them in the shadowy jungles, we have an ominous sight of glowing eyes everywhere, as they all stare at the soldier walking through the darkened jungle and rocky terrain. This image gives me strong Jurassic Park the game vibes. Remember when the Troodon, the sinister theropod dinosaur with glowing eyes and a toxic bite, had their eyes glowing in the dark while making some of the scariest sounds you can ever imagine? That's basically what we are looking at here, except these aren't Troodon, which, by the way, it's a dubious taxon based on a single tooth finding. This is actually a pack of Deinonychus, a medium-sized dromaeosaur theropod dinosaur that lived in North America during the Aptian-Albian stage of the Cretaceous period, 125 to 110 million years ago. The novel shows them forming packs to hunt down the soldiers, as well as being described as wolf-sized creatures, which we know is a deviation from how large they were in reality. We don't see much of them in the trailer aside from their glowing eyes, and a possible glimpse of one's foot as it walks through the jungle at night, which shows they are covered in bluish feathers, with scaly hands, feet, and snouts. This shot admittedly is in the dark, and we can't tell if it is either a Deinonychus or one of the Utahraptors, which we will see later. One thing is for sure, you wouldn't want to come across a sight like this in the middle of the night, out there in the rainy jungle as you try to survive in a world where nature dominates, while humanity is forced to choose between survival or pulled into the dark without being aware of what is lurking within the shadows. Up next are brief glimpses of the T-Rex, which is in two shots, the first being soldiers running away from a dinosaur as the trees block the sunlight, and the second being a shot near the end of the trailer, right before the title credits are displayed. It shows one of the soldiers hiding behind a tree as the dinosaur tilts its head behind the tree, with its jaws being slightly open, revealing its sharp serrated teeth. According to the Primitive War lore, the T-Rexes are large theropod carnivorous dinosaurs covered in greenish-blue protofeathers running along their backs and tail, with their legs, snout, underbellies, and arms being featherless, with at least two specimens being known as the mother and father, with several offspring. Now, we don't know if the T-Rexes in the movie are the parents, or if they are even the same individual, but we can just see how scary it is for the dinosaurs to chase people, brutalize them, or playing hide-and-seek with the Vulture Squad, all while blending into the jungle environment, thanks to their feathered bodies being in greens and blues. This will no doubt add to the horror elements that are promised to be in the movie, as it will hopefully make large and small dinosaurs scary again, as we've gotten used to seeing the T-Rex and raptors as heroic, or not so scary in the Jurassic World franchise. The next creature featured in the trailer briefly appears in a shot that goes by very quick, and has sparked discussion on whether this is a Spinosaurus due to its snout shape or aquatic abilities, or a Caprasuchus, an ancient Mahajangasuchid crocodiliform, whose name means boar croc, which did appear in the Primitive War lore, as it is seen attacking some Triceratops in concept art. While it does look a little bit like the Spinosaurus, especially in how it is typically depicted in popular culture, and this shot is very similar to the one seen in the Jurassic World Rebirth trailer, this is most likely a Caprasuchus due to its broader crocodilian-like snout, beady eyes, and canonical teeth, and the fact that it is prominently featured in the Primitive War novel means that this is not a Spinosaurus but a Caprasuchus. Let's also not forget that Caprasuchus had longer hind limbs and front legs for a crocodilian, allowing it to hunt more efficiently on land, capable of sprinting for brief periods. This means we will likely see Caprasuchus in the film being very aggressive, territorial, and adept at hunting on both land and in water, making for some truly chilling moments that will rock the audience expectations on when these scaly creatures will strike next. This takes us to the last few shots that gives us glimpses of both the pterosaurs and Utahraptors that are present in the trailer, and will no doubt play a prominent role in the film. First, we get an intense shot of a helicopter flying in the stormy night, with the door gunner firing a machine gun at the camera, with flashes briefly revealing the threat of flying pterosaurs swirling around the helicopter as the camera zooms in on the side of the aircraft. Could these be Quetzalcoatlus, the giant flying reptiles mentioned before? They certainly appear to be, as I don't think any other flying creature would match the description of the giant Astarchopterosaurs. But on the other hand, these could be entirely different breeds of pterosaurs, due to the size difference and the fact that we haven't had a clear look at the design of the Quetzalcoatlus yet. Which means that the pterosaur seen in this shot could very well be either Quetzalcoatlus, maybe juvenile Quetzalcoatlus, or even smaller to medium-sized pterosaurs such as Rhamphorhynchus or another type of pterosaur. Let me know down in the comments below what kind of pterosaur you think this could be. This brings us to the last shot of the trailer, accompanied by the visual of the thick jungle, with Jeremy Pavin's character looking straight ahead, uttering the phrase, "There are monsters out here." before we see the shot of the 3 Utah raptors staring at the camera, with the middle one having a knife stuck in its eye, as the 3 raptors stand in the midst of a fiery explosion. Primitive War sets these raptors to be the antagonists of the story, as the Utah raptors were large-sized dromaeosaur theropods covered in feathers, lived during the early Cretaceous period from 139 to 134.6 million years ago, measuring 20 to 23 feet in length and weighing more than a ton. Already these creatures are terrifying, with their gaping jaws showing large jagged teeth, large owl-like eyes, and a dead cold stare that is locked into anything that moves in front or around them. The middle raptor with its left eye damaged by a knife attack is called Cyclops, in reference to it having one eye left, and as a mythological reference to the creature from the Odyssey, in Greek mythology called Cyclops. You can tell that the raptors are different from the Jurassic Park and World raptors not just because they are closer to scientific accuracy, but also in their role as vicious predators that serve as the slasher horror villains of Primitive War. It's very likely we'll get to see the Utahraptors be very aggressive in their territoriality, monstrous demeanor, and capacity for inflicting devastating violence on the human soldiers and other animals that come into contact with them. It's a refreshing take on one of the most popular group of theropod dinosaurs in media, and it is nice to see that we are moving away from the Jurassic Park depictions, which helps to differentiate this film from other dinosaur media that tries either too hard to be like Jurassic Park or blend feathers with scales, but not in the way in which they embrace the scare factor of seeing something bird-like staring at you in the dark. In other words, feathered dinosaurs absolutely can be scary, and hopefully Primitive War will take advantage of just how terrifying raptors can be. Don't expect complete accuracy though, since the Utahraptors have truly gnarly looking teeth that didn't match the real animal's teeth shape, the design being more stylized to give them a monstrous appetite, and their pack hunting behavior which deviates from what we know about raptors in the fossil record. There is currently no evidence to strongly support pack hunting as seen with wolves, as raptors would have been more like gang hunters, in which they take down their prey in a way that matches the behavior of Komodo dragons, which they team up to take down their prey, but then go back to fending for themselves once they've catched the prey. Still though, having raptors be the villain in a dinosaur movie is something that we haven't seen in a while, as normally the dinosaur villain is either a large theropod like a T-Rex, a hybrid dinosaur like the Indominus Rex, or a dinosaur that's falsely labeled as bigger and larger than the T-Rex for the sake of appealing to pop culture depictions than being accurate to science. This about covers the dinosaurs and creatures that will be featured in Primitive War, and I'm sure there's way more we haven't seen yet that will appear in the film, from possible brief appearances of sauropods, non-dinosaur creatures like the Caprasuchus, to herbivores like Triceratops likely appearing. It promises to be a dinosaur war film that will deliver on the action, horror, violence, thrills, and exploration of the nature of conflict, strong social commentary about the Vietnam War, and a blend of both emotional and sentimental themes about how humans ride the line between civilization and animalistic savagery. Here's where I'll finish off the video by briefly exploring what Primitive War will likely mean beyond just being dinosaur flair set in the Vietnam War. The film is looking to be an exploration, a meditative experience on the nature of war, violence, primordial chaos, and the futility of human conflicts in the grand scale of nature. Blending dinosaur thrills with Vietnam War commentary could be a great way to explore the deeper layers of surviving in a world where humanity's violent tendencies are put to the test, on whether we can rely on our primitive instincts to survive in the most hostile or dangerous places on Earth, especially in the presence of dinosaurs who have mysteriously shown up in the Vietnam War in the year 1968. Its historical and cultural context is significant because it touches on the US involvement in conflicts like the Vietnam War, concerning the clash of ideologies such as capitalism versus communism, nationalism versus colonialism, North versus South, involvement versus isolation, etc. Primitive War, the graphic novel, comic book adaptations, and maybe the movie, is a commentary on how ideology, patriotism, and historical injustice echoes not just in society, but also in nature. Dinosaurs emerging at the height of the Vietnam War can be interpreted as nature or the universe's way of preparing humankind for what is to come if it cannot control its own violent tendencies. It reimagines the jungle setting of Vietnam as a psychological battleground between man and nature, reflecting on the state of society during the late 60s and early 70s. With rising anti-war movements, the Watergate scandal, the loss of cultural values and ideals like the American dream or patriotic militarism, and the media televising the devastating conflict in ways that was never imagined before, the time period of the Vietnam War was a pivotal and transformative moment in real-life history that echoes even to the present day. So what exactly does this have to do with Primitive War, and how does the film's premise of dinosaurs in the Vietnam War isn't just shaping itself to be a different kind of dinosaur film, but how it contributes to film, art, and media's exploration of this fascinatingly dark time in history? Think of the films that were brought up earlier that influenced in Primitive War: Jurassic Park, Kong Skull Island, Platoon, Apocalypse Now, Predator, Full Metal Jacket, as well as other films, while not influences, that either directly deal with or subtly reference Vietnam, like Taxi Driver, The Deer Hunter, Jacob's Ladder, First Blood, Forrest Gump, The Five Bloods, or even Tropic Thunder. Pop culture has a morbid fascination with exploring the Vietnam War through many lenses because Vietnam in history laid the groundwork for future conflicts, the jungle aesthetics, and the political, cultural, philosophical, or psychological lens in which how the conflict drastically changed US policy, history, and the long-term effects it had on the collective psyche. Now, I don't mean to turn this video into a history or even political lecture, since this is not the theme of my channel. I'm here to review the trailer for Primitive War, but I bring this up because it is significant for a film of this caliber to subtly incorporate these themes without it coming off as preachy or obvious. Otherwise, this would risk the film becoming too pretentious for its own good or not deep enough to cover the Vietnam War themes. I feel with the inclusion of dinosaurs, this film will look like it will balance out both the tense action and horror with the subtle philosophical themes of survival, war, primordial versus civilized, and perhaps deeper metaphysical themes regarding nature's role in all this. It's a fascinating aspect of the film that makes me appreciate monster and dinosaur movies, when it uses war, science, philosophy, mythology, or history as allegories for the human experience and our place in the cosmos. Comment down below if you think the movie will either explore the Vietnam War backdrop in subtle, shallow, or deep ways that could resonate, or if you're simply enticed by the premise of dinosaurs fighting soldiers in the Vietnam War. This covers everything to discuss in the trailer analysis, discussion, and review of Primitive War 2025, and as the film is aiming for a summer release, right alongside Jurassic World Rebirth, I won't get into whether this film will be better than Rebirth, or what the impact of non-Jurassic Park films will have on dinosaur media, since I'm saving those for another time. We went over the cast and crew, the influences, historical and philosophical depth, and the creatures that will appear in the film based on what we can see in the trailers, and the behind-the-scenes featurette. The film certainly has me excited, but cautiously so, on how it will turn out, and whether it will be a dumpster fire or a surprise film remains to be seen. But hopefully you enjoyed the trailer analysis, breakdown, and review of the upcoming 2025 Dino War film. Let me know in the comments down below, what did you think of the trailer for Primitive War? Are you excited for the premise of dinosaurs in the Vietnam War? Do you think the film will live up to its premise? Will it be too scary or violent? Have you personally read the books? Will it stand on its own even with the Jurassic World franchise dominating? Could the film turn to a philosophical exploration of war and survival, or just be a shallow indie blockbuster with great effects? Will this spark interest in exploring dinosaur horror not just on the internet but also in film and possibly TV? I'll leave it up to you to decide on how to answer those questions. Don't forget to leave a like, comment, subscribe to the channel, and stay up to date with the latest videos. And as always, there are monsters out here. This was Saurian Studios 1207, signing off.